So today, we're going to take a journey back in time. We're using this really fascinating historical document from 1916 called The Tribes and Castes of the Central Provinces of India. And this text? It's our window into a world that, over a century ago, was run by a super complex and powerful set of unwritten rules. Our journey kicks off with this one single powerful proverb. Now, what does that even mean? Well, it suggests a world where your identity, your caste, could literally determine your fate. A Brahmin, who was always feasted as an act of charity, might die from overeating. A Sunar, a goldsmith, could get bilious from sitting by his furnace all day. And a Kunbi, a farmer, was thought to be the most vulnerable to ghosts. You see, this isn't just some old saying. It's a social map. So, here's our game plan for digging into this. We're going to start with the code of caste itself. Then we'll get into the rituals that guided everyday life, how your job defined your purity, the powerful, unseen world of spirits and beliefs, and finally, we'll even look at the codes that existed on the very fringes of society. All right, first up, the absolute foundation of this entire social world, the system of caste. It was basically the blueprint for everything. You know, what's really fascinating is where the word itself comes from. According to our source, caste is derived from a Sanskrit word that means householder. And that tells you so much. It wasn't just about ranking people from high to low. It was about defining your family, your community, your job, your entire place in the world. Okay, to really get a handle on this, let's zoom in on one group, the Kunbi. These guys were the dominant farming caste in the region. A massive group. We're talking nearly 1.5 million people back then. But as you're about to see, even a single huge community like this was incredibly diverse. And this is where the complexity really shows. Within the Kunbi, you had the Jare, who were thought to be the oldest settlers, probably mixed with local tribes. Then you've got the Kaire, whose name hints that their ancestors had a job preparing catechu from trees. You have the Danoj, who likely branched off from shepherds. And right at the top, the Tyrol, who claimed they had noble Rājpūt heritage. So you see, one caste, but a whole bunch of different origin stories. All right, now let's see how this social code actually played out in the specific rituals that guided every stage of life, from birth all the way to marriage. So, let me ask you a question. A common sight at Hindu weddings is the smearing of red powder in the bride's hair. But what was the original meaning behind it? I mean, was it just for decoration? Or was there something more going on? Well, the substance they use is called sendor, or vermilion. And get this, our 1916 source gives us a fascinating and way deeper explanation for this powerful symbol. And here it is. The vermilion was a substitute for blood. It was this deeply symbolic act of marking the bride, of officially admitting her into her husband's clan. It's a direct line to these ancient rites of community and belonging. Pretty powerful, right? The unseen world also held this incredible power, especially around childbirth. Imagine this. A pregnant woman had to follow these super strict taboos. She couldn't look at a corpse or see an eclipse because she was afraid it would harm her unborn child. And if a baby was born during an eclipse, a tiny silver moon was hung around its neck as a protective charm to ward off those forces. Next up, let's explore how a person's job was about so much more than just earning a living. No, it was directly tied to their social purity and their spiritual standing. This is a perfect example. Check this out. On one hand, you have the Lohar, the blacksmith. He was considered socially low, impure. Why? Because his bellows were made of cowhide and he worked with the color black, which was seen as an evil omen. But then, on the other hand, you have the Māli, the gardener. He was also lower status than a farmer, but he was considered ceremonially pure. The reason? He grew flowers for offerings to the gods, a sacred task that meant even a high-caste Brahmin could accept water from his hands. And this idea of purity, it trickled down to everything, even farming. Take a crop like sawn hemp, for example. Growing it was a taboo. Why? Probably because the process of retting, soaking the stalks in water to get the fiber, was seen as polluting. And this created whole new subcastes, like the Lohars, who were looked down upon just because of the crop they grew. Think about that. Okay, let's dive even deeper into that unseen world, the mystical beliefs and superstitions that had a very real and a very powerful impact on daily life. You know, a central piece to a lot of these beliefs was a person's hair. Yeah, their hair. It wasn't just, hair. It was seen as the physical location of their strength, their vitality, their actual life force. And because it was so important, hair was governed by all these strict rules.
Frankish kings, for instance, were forbidden from ever cutting their hair. Aztec priests believed their power to see the future would literally vanish if their hair was shorn. And in India, a widow's head was shaved to symbolize that she was renouncing the world. Shaving was also a common punishment for adultery, a very public way of stripping someone of their status and their strength.
And this belief in omens, it guided pretty much everything. For the Parathi hunters, whose whole livelihood depended on luck, a decision as crucial as where to hunt could come down to something as simple as counting grains of rice. An even number, good omen, a successful hunt was ahead. An odd number, you stay home. So you might be wondering, what about the people who lived outside of these social rules? Well, as we're about to see, even outlaw groups had their own highly structured codes and their own rituals. Okay, let's talk about the thugs. And we're not talking about just random killers here. The text describes them as a highly organized fraternity of assassins who actually saw murder as a hereditary trade, a skill to be passed down from father to son with absolute chilling precision. Their method was just terrifyingly systematic. First, they'd infiltrate a group of travelers. Step 2, they'd spend days, maybe even weeks, journeying with them to gain their complete and total trust. Third, the leader would give the signal, a coded phrase called the journey, something as simple as begin chewing tobacco. And finally, the designated stranglers would use a cloth, a rumal, to kill their victims swiftly and silently. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, whether it's a wedding ritual, a farming taboo, or even the code of a murderer, you see a world where every action was part of this complete system. This incredibly intricate web of unwritten rules, it provided social order, it gave people their identity, and it gave a sense of meaning to everyone inside of it. That was their code, right? From over a century ago, something we can read about today. But it really makes you think, doesn't it? What are the powerful, unwritten rules that shape your life, your work, and your community right now? What's the invisible code that governs your world today?